Hi, folks. Steve Urban here, host of the Riderflex podcast and founder and CEO of our day job recruiting firm, Riderflex. We hope you enjoy this episode. And as a reminder, please subscribe to the podcast for updates and news. Finally, if you haven't already, check out the series of books we've published on hiring, interviewing, and overall career advice titled The Riderflex Guide, available on Amazon. And now, a quick word from our sponsor.
Most homeowners don't have the time or expertise to properly take care of their home, which causes costly issues to arise. That's where Kira Home Maintenance comes in. We're a full-service, routine maintenance company that was developed by a certified home inspector. Each quarter, we service our clients' homes following manufacturer's recommendations to properly maintain all the necessary appliances. We provide the materials and expertise to prolong the life of your property, creating a healthy and efficient environment for your family. From top to bottom, we'll maintain and service your home. To get started, we have a property inspection to determine what needs to be maintained, and a maintenance plan is created based on your preferences. From refrigerator coils to filters, vents, and drains, we do it all, and we do it well. Contact us today for your free routine maintenance inspection, and never worry about your maintenance again.
Emily Morris on the Riderflex podcast. Hello, Emily. How are you today?
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here with you.
And are you in Atlanta, Georgia, outside of there, or whereabouts?
I'm in Atlanta today in my home office. We do have a corporate office right in the center of Midtown, but today I'm working out of the home office.
Okay, very good. And you must be from Georgia because I can hear the accent pretty plainly.
You know, you're one of the few, actually. I get asked a lot if I'm sure I'm from Georgia because my accent isn't as thick maybe as people think it should be, but it does tend to come out when I'm close to my family or my grandmother or things like that. And I did spend quite a bit of time over the 4th of July holiday last week with my family. So maybe it's a bit thicker today than normal. But yes, I was born and raised here in Metro Atlanta. And have lived here, the majority of my life.
Gotcha. So family, all the families nearby, mom, dad, things like that?
Yeah, my parents were high school sweethearts at a local Atlanta high school. And I grew up in the northwest suburb of Atlanta, Marietta, and did all my, public schooling there before going to Vanderbilt in Nashville for university.
I know right where Marietta is. I used to, back in another life, I was, believe it or not, you're not even going to believe this. I used to be a district manager for Bath and Body Works.
Okay, I like it.
And we had like a store in there somewhere. I can't remember, somewhere around there. But anyway, yeah, I've been to Marietta a few times.
So I'm sure I shopped there actually, in the 90s.
Probably.
At the one right at Town Center Mall in Marietta, probably.
Yeah, I think that was maybe the name of it. So are you folks still married then all these years?
They are, yes. They've become, I'm the baby of 3 kids. So they've become both, parents, but also friends of mine when I was the last one to leave the nest. And, they both are, I'd say, quite active in my son's life too, now as grandparents as well.
Very good. How many grandchildren do they have total?
They have 4, but only one of them belongs to me. And mine is the only one that lives in Atlanta too. So he gets a little bit of the extra attention.
What'd your mom and dad do for a living?
So my mom was a social worker in her career, but has once she had 3 kids at home and my dad traveled a lot growing up. She left the workforce to take care of us full time and never went back into the workforce. My dad is an entrepreneur. And so, as we were just talking before the podcast started a bit about how sometimes entrepreneurship isn't a choice and sometimes it's in your bones. I think I got it honest from my dad. He's had he's a civil engineer from Georgia Tech by degree, but has had a number of different businesses over the course of his career, spanning all types of things from civil engineering and construction consulting to things like medical devices and tech. So
Wow.
kind of
All
all
right.
over the board.
Is he retired now?
I don't think he'll ever truly retire, but definitely he's reduced a lot of the day to day, and they spend about half their time in Florida now. I'd say he's not nearly as active as he was when I was growing up, which was, before 9/11, and he was gone every single day, but typically day trips to different places because he was in construction consulting at the time with Delta Airlines here in Atlanta being his biggest client. And so he was always at a different Delta terminal. And so definitely grew up a lot around having a parent that travels a lot and, sort of an active, one of the reasons my active mother requirement, because my dad wasn't home as much. She needed to be home with the three of us kids.
And out of the three kids, were you the straight A student, the good kid at the library, or were you the rebel? Were you the partier? What?
All three of us were straight A kids. I think we had
Really?
like the fear of God like into us of,
Wow.
we didn't come home with B's. But in general, my brother tended to be the more buttoned up one, being the firstborn. My sister was, she and I are very different. She's very organized. She's a teacher. Methodical. And then I've tended to always be the free radical of the family, always the one that was least likely to predict. It's actually kind of ironic that I'm the only one who's actually still in Atlanta. They all thought I would just be off living in another country or doing something else.
Right.
And the fact that, now my brother lives in Florida, my sister lives in New York, and I'm the only one here is not really what anyone would have predicted. But Atlanta's my home and I love the city. I take full advantage of the work my dad did when I was a child at the airport. I travel constantly, and being able to get anywhere nonstop here in Atlanta is a huge, huge benefit to me, being in climate tech while also being based in Atlanta, which isn't exactly known for that.
You didn't fall in love with Nashville when you went to school there?
I did fall in love with Nashville too. It's a wonderful, wonderful city, and it's evolved so much even since I was there. But something about Atlanta, I think I'm just a little bit more of a bigger city girl. I spent some time in New York as well, and came this close to wanting to be a New York girl as well. But
Really?
Atlanta's the right size city for me, I think.
And how did you meet your husband at Vanderbilt?
No, I met Jason here in Atlanta, actually through entrepreneurial activities. So I wasn't working on Emrgy at the time yet, but a few friends and I started an underground restaurant here in Atlanta.
Whoa.
Just for fun. Yeah,
didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, just for fun. We would on Sunday nights host a dinner that was open to the public. We would cook one seating. We had a table for 20, a big farm table, and we would have strangers come in and eat with us. I am not to be trusted in the kitchen. Like, I'm forbidden from even doing dishes these days. I'm that bad. But I was part of the front of the house. It was equally a social experiment as much as it was a culinary experiment when you have strangers in your home eating food. And so I spent time with our diners, and interestingly, Jason, my husband, he is in the culinary industry. He is a chef, was working in restaurants, and now as a private chef. But he had heard about this little culinary experiment and came to eat at our restaurant. And so we met there. And when we learned that he actually is a classically trained chef, we said, hey, you should come and cook with us on Sundays, help us out, help us elevate our offering a little bit. And so he did. He came and started cooking with us, and that's how I got to know him. And I'd say maybe the rest is history, because we started dating pretty quickly after that.
Pretty cool.
And got engaged about 3 years later.
I didn't know this about the underground restaurant thing. Now, what was that in the house you guys lived in? Did you rent a kitchen? How'd you do that?
It was a friend of mine's house. Yeah. So it was, not exactly inspected by the health department, not exactly, certificate of operation. It was more of a, we had a subscriber list, an online list of subscribers that were interested in food in Atlanta. And we would send out our menu by email on Wednesdays. And then the first 20 people that wanted a seat at the table would sign up and they'd get to come. And we couldn't charge anything for it because, then we'd have to actually be licensed to do that. So we would put out like a suggested donation for the rest, the ingredients and whatnot each week. And if you paid it, great. If you didn't, it was still fun for us. So
was this while you were in school or after school?
No, it was after school. I was in my 20s. We all had full-time day jobs. The main chef is a financial advisor at Morgan Stanley, and my counterpart in the front of the house, she works at Turner Broadcasting here in Atlanta. And it was just a group of us that really loved doing new things, love, putting a project together. And I think that's kind of the hallmark of entrepreneurialism. You take something you love and you try to figure out if you can make a business out of it. And if not, it's a fun project that keeps you inspired.
When you went to school, you majored in human and organizational development, right?
I did. And that was not something that I necessarily grew up saying, I want to be a human and organizational development major. But, being the third child, I was also quite competitive in sports when I was in high school, that college was, it was definitely on the radar. I was very academically driven, but back then it wasn't, I didn't go to a school that had college tours every year or had college counselors even. It was sort of all on you to do. And so, my summer before my senior year, I said, Emily, where are you going to go to college? And I said, I don't know. I'll figure it out. And she said, well, you're about to have sports every weekend. You should figure out what you're going to do. And we hopped in the car and we drove the whole Southeast looking at UNC and University of South Carolina and Clemson. And none of those really spoke to me.
What about Georgia? Georgia Tech?
Oh, no. Dad went to Georgia Tech. There's no Bulldogs in our house. If you're from Georgia, you're one or the other. You can't do both.
All right.
And Georgia Tech was not on the list either because, I wasn't really prepared to follow in his footsteps, nor did engineering really sound all that fun to me. Although it's funny now, I work with almost all engineers. So my older sister at the time was already at Vanderbilt. She had applied and went there and was loving it. But as I mentioned before, she and I are so different. It wasn't on my radar. And then I went to visit her for the weekend and I said, oh, I get it. This is why you go here. And I ended up following in her footsteps and going to Vanderbilt, which was academically rigorous is where I wanted, the level where I wanted to be, still relatively close to home. And hey, it was just, I don't want to say it was an easy thing, but it made the decision easier, right? To say, oh, I'll just do that.
And then the whole time, were you thinking, I'm going to be an entrepreneur like my dad? That's my plan. What was the plan?
So I wanted to study business. That was the plan, was to study business and to go into a corporate style path. And I, unbeknownst to me, chose Vanderbilt, and they don't have an undergraduate business program. They have at school, but not an undergraduate. And I didn't even know. I showed up and said, where do I sign up for business? And it didn't exist. So what a lot of people do at Vanderbilt is they study human and organizational development, and then they pair that with something that takes them into a path, whether that's economics or corporate strategy, which is what I did, or you can do public policy if you're thinking more of a political type of track, or you could do something else for social or nonprofit type of organizations. But it ended up being perfect for me. It was quite a bit of writing, quite a bit of organizational theory and psychology. It prepared me well for building and growing, a startup later, unbeknownst to me. I definitely was very entrepreneurial in general, although I don't think I would have called it that. Always even looking back through my life, there's always been some project, some initiative, some side hustle, something that I've always done, and did that through college too. Some restaurant, underground restaurant, who knows? There's always been something that I maybe looking, in the rearview mirror, I could say it was always clear that I would go into some entrepreneurial track. But at the time, no, I thought just more corporate type of.
And that's what you did. You came out and got your first corporate job, so to speak. And right away, did you bucket yourself functionally as an ops person, salesperson? Like what function were you?
I've always been highly interpersonal, and I would say I've always leaned toward the commercial side. And, even coming out of school and being mostly writing a bunch of grants, I wrote them almost like business plans. Here's why you should fund this technology or this technology. And even that's kind of how Emrgy started, was I was writing grants for essentially the beginnings of Emrgy's technology, working in my previous role. And in writing those, you have to, it's not written like a business plan, but it's very similar. You have to say, why is this technology worth funding? Why is this technology better than the state of the art? What are all the other competitive technologies, and why is this one better? And as I was, working on this with a team of engineers, I thought, first of all, I thought somebody has to be doing this already. There's large solar projects and there's small solar projects. There's large wind projects and there's small wind projects. There's big hydroelectric plants. There have to be small. But then when I actually went out and looked at it, what I learned was that hydropower doesn't scale down the way that perhaps other technologies do when you're talking about rivers and fish and boats and this. And so small hydro has been very difficult to make as prolific or as scalable as solar.
Now, let me pause right there. I think I just want to, for the listeners, I want to make sure they understand. So what happened was you were working for, maybe, I guess, is AMT a consulting firm, basically?
Yeah, they're a small defense contractor.
Okay. And there you're a project manager helping write these proposals for companies like Emrgy that are looking for grants or funding or investors or whatever.
No, we were actually building a portfolio of technologies there. And I was proposing essentially to the federal government to fund them. And so, AMT, a portfolio of technologies that are from, battlefield energy storage to braking systems for aircraft carriers to things that are defense or defense adjacent. And, originally we wrote a proposal for distributed power generation to the U.S. Office of Naval Research. And so it was essentially a lot of the beginnings of what Emrgy's distributed hydropower is now. But I didn't know that at the time. Over the course of those proposals, I got really surprised at the opportunity in front of climate tech in general, and how badly we needed to grow our renewable energy generating capacity in this country and globally. And I also was shocked that water power wasn't more prolific at the small scale. It is highly prolific at the large scale. If you look at any of the breakdowns of our energy mix, our country would fall apart without hydro. And many countries were. But what's growing in clean tech isn't always, and really is shifting quite a bit from the large scale projects to the small scale projects that are local and delivering energy to the communities directly, rather than from a far off hydroelectric dam or something like that. And it shocked me to learn how hard it is to do hydro at the small scale.
Were you the one that came up with the original idea to do that?
No. We had a team of academic advisors that would essentially ideate in terms of technology and different types of engineering designs. And then we would take those and match them up with available funding opportunities and find ways that we could essentially fund new R&D Um,
And not to sound too simplified here in commoner language, but somebody that came up with that presented it to you to match it with funding, and then at some point you're seeing a scaled version of this drawing of this hydro powered thing in a water.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it was unique for us, right? Like a lot of what we were doing had one purpose and one purpose only. It was to deliver, it worked on an aircraft carrier. It worked here or there. It wasn't necessarily something that could be broadly brought to market. And this was unique where I was looking at, oh man, this isn't something that's only meant for military applications. I need this in my community. I need this in my backyard. And why doesn't this already exist? And so that work went on for, years. I continued my first program on this, I think, was in 2011 or something like that, 2010, and then followed on funding in 2012. And I got more and more interested, but I didn't leap out of my day job on day one. I was just continuing to think about why, it is, clean tech 1.0 timeframe back then. Everyone was talking about solar and wind and how solar and wind were going to totally fix or change all of our lives. And I kept thinking, wait a second, what about water? And, as we were building this out, realizing why not water? Like water is really, really hard. And, I'm not saying that water is necessarily that much harder than solar or wind, but there are a lot more regulations and a lot more hurdles to jump through to make water successful on a smaller scale.
When did you have was there a magical moment where you are having a glass of wine with a friend or at a bar and you're like, this is such a good idea and I know nobody's doing it. We're going to do our own thing. Was there a moment?
There was a moment, and it wasn't necessarily with a friend. So one of the things I did, I had been thinking about this and I wasn't sure if I was the only one. Sometimes when you have an idea, you're like, maybe it's me, maybe I'm crazy. Was on a newsletter subscriber list, and I saw a technology challenge come out by Shell Energies, or I don't know what it was called back then, something from Shell. And they were putting out a call for all innovative energy tech. And so I said, look, I'm just going to apply and see if anyone else thinks this is interesting. So I didn't even have Emrgy Inc. I didn't have it was just an idea, tech idea.
And did you have the rights or the green light to present that idea from your company, or what was
no, not I was just was working full time, and I would have just attributed it back to the company if they had gotten mad. I didn't
I didn't know
it as a separate thing.
Yeah, how does that work?
I just wanted to see what the reaction was. And I don't know how many applicants there were. Maybe there was 10, maybe there was 1,000. I don't really know. But what I do know is that the idea I submitted came back in third place. And so I said, okay. Yeah. Somebody else besides me thinks that there's something here.
Was there any grant money in that? Was there a prize money?
No, it was just like a tech. It was just like a challenge thing. But nonetheless, I went down the list of the judges panel and I picked out, a few names, and I reached out to them and I asked, what did you think about this? Why did you select it? And got some really good feedback. And one of those judges I reached out to was at Duke Energy and their innovation department. And he ended up coming in and being my first employee about, 2 years later.
Oh, wow.
So
how about that?
It was interesting. It was me gathering these proof points, these data points that said, hey, there's something here. You got to do something about this. And so that gave me one big boost of confidence. Then I went and talked to the company and said, hey, if you guys aren't going to do anything with this, because they were off to other, DARPA awards and other big things that they were focused on. And this one had been kind of sitting on the shelf for a while. And I said, if you're not going to do anything with this, what would it look like if I did? And so they were open to that concept. And I, ended up now creating a concept around it, creating a name around it, going and what I knew best was how to apply for government grants and get funding. I then started applying for government grants under this new name with this technology. And then in 2016, DOE awarded the new company 1.2 million.
Okay, let's pause. That's an awesome. Congratulations on that.
Thanks.
That was a major milestone right there, right? The 1.2 million. Can I ask though, did you have to like buy the rights to the technology, or did you have to, I'm trying to figure out how you navigated your way through getting that from your current company.
Well, I didn't know what I was doing, to be clear. I had no plan. I went and did some networking with some entrepreneurial groups in Atlanta. I was trying to figure out how other people were doing this, and found an attorney who essentially helped me structure something super simple.
I see.
That, because I was in my mid-20s at the time. I didn't have any money to buy this. I didn't know how much it was worth. So what we ended up doing was doing an IP, an intellectual property assignment in exchange for equity in the company. So then we said, hey, look, let's just let the success of the company determine whether this technology is worth zero or worth $1 billion. And so that worked for them. It worked for me. And so I had that, and it was better than a license, because sometimes people think, oh, there's strings attached to the license or whatever. This was a full assignment. Everything is now owned by Emrgy. And I was able to apply for the grant under Emrgy, was awarded the grant under Emrgy. And then that was really the light bulb moment that said, okay, now I can do this full time. I can now hire someone. This is a real business now.
Did you know when you're waiting for the answer on whether or not you're going to get the 1.2 million, was it like 50-50, or were you going into it knowing I got this, no big deal? I'm just trying to.
It was a shot in the dark, Steve. It was a shot in the dark. I just totally kept my day job. I was shocked when the notice came in.
Really?
Notice of award. I truly was shocked.
Do you remember where you were sitting, and was it a phone call?
Yeah, I was sitting at my desk doing my job, my day job, and it came in. I said, "Oh my goodness, this is a big deal."
Did you have the Tom Cruise movement? Did you just like stand up from your desk and say, "I'm out of here, see ya"? Just playing.
No, I think I was a little bit in shock, to be honest, and I knew enough to know also, because this was my former life, that these things don't happen overnight. Like, you get the notice of award, and then you don't actually see the money typically for like 3 to 5 months. So, or start to get it all contracted. So I knew this was the moment I was like, okay, now is the time I'm acting. But it wasn't like that moment.
Okay. And personally, where were you at that time? Had you already met were you married yet? Had you already met your husband? What were
I had met my husband, I think. Yes, I'd met my husband, but we weren't yet engaged, weren't yet, really.
Of course, he asked you to marry him right after he found out about the 1.2 million. No, I'm just playing. I'm just joking. Just joking.
Oh man,
I'm just joking. Don't tell him I said
totally.
Just playing around.
He had recently also gone out on his own to become a private chef, and so when I decided to leave my job, and we're sort of two business owners wondering, like, are either of these businesses going to make it? Do we have the stability we need? It's been pretty funny.
That's pretty crazy. Okay, you get the 1.2 million. Then you're like, holy shit. You're like, okay, all right. I guess I better file for an LLC and open my checking account and get going.
Yeah. No, I truly did. I didn't, I used an attorney for the most minimal things I needed to. Like, I filed the trademark online. I filed the LLC online.
So
I was about as scrappy as I could possibly get. One of the things that government grants do help startup entrepreneurs a lot is they help you raise venture money from angel capital or angel investors and things like that, because you're able to show how you're not just going to take investors' money and spend it all on prototypes or something like that. You can really spend the money on commercial development. And so that 1.2 million was completely catalytic in helping bring in some early angel investors. And that's kind of how we.
Absolutely. How much have you raised total? If counting that 1.2 million, how much have you raised total? Do you mind sharing?
Yeah, so that first round we brought in another 850,000 in angel money to have a little 2 million launch. That was our launch. We raised our seed round in 2018, which was 4.25 million, and then we closed our A round earlier this year at 18.5 million. And so we've also raised along the way. We got another $3.5 million DOE grant in 2022. And we've had, several other smaller DOE awards throughout. So, we've hovered around 32 million in total capital raised, including equity and grants, since that 2016 time period.
Now you're a professional cash raiser. You're
I'd like to think so, but somehow it always feels like as soon as it comes in, it starts going, right back out.
But to raise that much money in that short of time, that takes a lot of time to do. People that haven't done it before. I mean, it takes a lot of time to be a CEO just to run a company for the day job, much less the cash raise.
Yeah, it is a full-time job, and truly, the company has seen the effects of that, right? When you have a CEO that's really internally facing, that actually, it'd be great if I could use my human and organizational development degree every day and focus on org design or focus on people and focus on culture and all that. That'd be fabulous. But so much of my job has been very externally facing. How can we get the funding we need? Because every prototype we build costs $50,000, or how do we make sure that we can build up a manufacturing plant and all of these kinds of things that we need to have, but are very, very cost intensive. And so the business, I would say, for a CEO that has a human and organizational development degree, you'd never know it, because it is a full-time job to be able to raise the kind of capital that's needed.
Not to mention, I'm sure it affected time with your husband and your son. And you're like, okay, I got to take another investor to dinner and ask this guy to write a check. And this is going to take another 3 hours. I mean, it takes work.
Yeah. I mean, and everything has very coincidentally landed around life milestones. I red-eyed home from some big investor meetings the morning that my husband had planned to propose, and was just or my then boyfriend had planned to propose to me to get married, and was just so, he had planned this whole extravagant thing. And I was just like, I don't care what we do today. Just don't tell me about it. And so, that was a funny memory. And then we closed our first big customer about 2 weeks before our wedding. And so, we needed more capital to be able to serve that customer, because they paid us when we delivered. So I was signing investor documents on my way to the rehearsal dinner that night. And then, I think the moment though was when I asked our labor and delivery doctor if there's Wi-Fi in the delivery room, and the speed of my husband just slowly turning and looking at me like, you've got to be kidding me. That was a moment I won't forget. And we got a good laugh out of that. But
that's a good one.
It's been fun to grow a startup baby and to grow a family sort of at the same time. It's been crazy. Don't get me wrong. It certainly hasn't been easy. But there are a lot of parallels. I get why people say a startup is like a baby, because there are so many parallels.
No doubt. Now's probably a good time to let's give the listeners an overview of the company as it stands today, and how you came up with the name and the spelling and all of it. Can you just give us the elevator pitch? Go for it.
Yeah. So Emrgy is a company whose core mission is to bring clean energy that's reliable, low cost, and completely base load, meaning it generates 24 hours a day, to our local homes and communities using water power. Our cities and towns were built around water since the beginning of civilization, and water power has historically been the source of lowest cost, most reliable electricity. And so Emrgy, at its core, we are bringing water power assets to distributed energy, and we're pairing that with solar and energy storage and other types of of climate focused technologies to make our world cleaner and the world for our children and their children cleaner. And so,
yep, go ahead.
Yeah. So Emrgy is spelled Emrgy. Emrgy, Emergy, is actually an engineering term that is defined as the sum of all different types of energy that come together to make a product or service. And so our name is based loosely off of that concept. It also stands for embodied energy and even has its own unit of measurement called the M-joule. I will admit I did not learn that tool in my university studies. That wasn't something that, came across my academic career. But I actually found the term because my name is Emily and my fingers are so programmed at going from E to M on the keyboard that I misspelled energy a number of times into Google, to the point where it kept coming up Emergy as something real. And so I finally said, what is this Emrgy concept? And I clicked on it and I saw the definition of all different types of energy coming together to make a product or embodied energy. And I said, wow, this works really well. I like it.
And then you went to GoDaddy to see if it was available URL, right?
I did. And emergy.com was going to be like $10,000 or something like that. And I said, oof, that's not going to work. And so I dropped the middle E to EMRI, and lo and behold, it was free. So a startup was born. A startup name. I said, I'll take the free one. Even if it's spelled a little wonky, I'll take the free name.
I love it. I love it. Okay. And how big is I don't know how much you can share, and it's still a private company, or how much you want to share. Employee count, client count, revenue. What do you want to share to give us an idea of how big the company has grown today?
Yeah, so Emrgy is a venture funded company. We just closed our Series A, as I mentioned before. And typically, if you're not familiar with venture funded companies, typically a Series A capital raise is closed when you have validation of your product, validation of early product market fit, and now you're going to scale. That's where Emrgy is today. So we have validated our product market fit with commercial installations in Denver, Colorado, in Salt Lake City, Utah, in Central Valley, California, in New Zealand even. And we are producing power commercially and generating revenue into the US and New Zealand utility grids. And then now our next phase is really going to be all about what we call numbering up. We're not scaling up in the sense of we're not changing our tech, we're not changing our equipment. We're just going to put many more numbers of our systems out into the field. Okay. And so now we are 42 employees strong. Okay. And we have certainly some open positions. We've done some streamlining as well. We grew really fast. We grew from 20 to 40 in 1 year. And that put a lot of strain on the business. Yes. Yep. But now we are focused on essentially how many systems we can commercially get out in the field as quickly as possible before our Series B, which will ultimately be just growth capital from there.
And Series B, do you think you'll be cash flow positive at that time? Do you plan on being cash flow positive by Series B? What do you think?
We have plans to be cash flow positive by Series B. Certainly, we have laid out a clear quantitative picture of how we can do that. Yes. And really, I have confidence in our team that we'll get there. But we one of the delicate tensions in our business is that we are venture funded and we are motivated to move extremely, extremely quickly. Yep. But our customer, being in water, being in agriculture, is a customer base that really, really values trust and credibility. And building that trust is not something you can do overnight. We've been really successful in building trust with our customers, but sometimes it can be a tension of, getting as many systems out there while also making sure we're not stepping all over our customers. And that's really, really important to us.
And for the listeners that may not understand, who are the customers and what exactly are they purchasing? Are they purchasing the unit? Are they purchasing the energy produced from the unit? Both? Help me
Yeah,
through
or
that.
neither, actually. Interestingly, we have
Okay.
a couple of different models. Our customers are water utilities, municipalities, or water management districts that are owning and or operating water infrastructure or conveyance. So
Okay.
you think about canals, aqueducts, even flows that go in and out of industrial centers or data centers. Those are the types of water flow we look for because they're much less environmentally sensitive. No fish, no wildlife, and it helps us to get projects installed quickly.
Mhm.
Those customers can work with us in one of three ways. If they want to own their own power generation system, just like you might own the solar panels on your roof or something like that, they certainly can buy equipment from us, one module or multiple modules for generating power. The more popular way to work with us is through partnership, where essentially customers give us permission to own and operate our own system in their channel. So
I
we
see.
will come in, we'll own and operate the system, we'll sell power either to them or to their utility. And if we sell to the utility, we share the revenue with them as a
I
partnership.
see. I see.
That's the most common way we work.
Yeah, because then
There's
they don't
no
have, I don't,
money down, no
yeah.
investment on behalf of the water district. They're sharing in the benefit of what we're delivering.
Yeah. I
And
don't have to
then,
pay to, I don't have to pay to install it. I don't have to pay to keep it up. You're taking care of all that.
correct. We take care of, we de-risk it for them. We take care of all the financial hurdle, and then we have a revenue split with them for what we can generate to the grid.
Okay, very good. Now I'm in northern Colorado, up where I live. I know you're familiar with Colorado because you guys have a building here, an office here. These waterways are all over the place, right? I live in kind of the rural area in a rural town, and these farmers, they use this water drain. I see these waterways going everywhere. Now, I'm ignorant to this. I apologize for asking the question. Does the farmer own that trench, or is that waterway owned by the county, or how does that work?
It's very rare that an individual farmer would own the trench.
I see.
Typically, there is a co-op or an organization that owns and manages the water because typically the water is contracted. So they're buying it
Mm,
from a
mm,
federal source or a state source, and then they're
mm.
distributing it out to those farmers.
Okay.
It could be that the farmer sits on the board of directors of that organization, and a lot of times they're very community driven. And so
Yeah.
the local landowners are a part of that organization and
Mhm.
the local water users. But typically when we contract, we're contracting with the organization that is managing the water infrastructure and buying and selling the water.
And that, when you say the word organization, is it the town? Is it the county? Is it the who?
Sometimes, we have a commercial project with Denver Water, which is the water authority on behalf of the city of Denver. So that's a municipality.
Okay.
We also have commercial contracts with irrigation districts that are more local political subdivisions that are organized simply to manage, deliver, and ensure adequate water for the community. And
Okay.
so typically they're almost always not for profit, almost always. Not always, but almost always. And they make decisions like a business. They have a board of directors, they have an annual budget. It's very much a B2B type of sale, but they're not necessarily in the business to generate power. They're in business to deliver water. And so developing the relationship, getting them comfortable, and then defining the partnership structure that works is sort of what we're first of its kinding on. We're trying to find the best path forward to partner with these districts to be part of the energy transition.
Yeah, I want to ask you something pretty specific here, but you'll understand why I'm asking it in just a second. Have you ever, or you or your team, had to pitch in front of a planning and zoning commission for a town?
I personally have not. I imagine perhaps someone on our team
Okay.
has, but a lot of times, water is quite high on the priority level for zoning, easements,
Yes.
permissions, and so we are benefited from the fact that we're staying completely within the water right of way. And that right of way tends to have a very high priority in terms of getting projects done.
Interesting. Okay. The reason I asked that question is because I now officially am a commissioner I like that. I like that.
Congratulations.
I walked around the house for like 2 or 3 weeks telling my wife, just call me commissioner.
I love it. I
I'm
love it.
on
You gotta
that.
soak it in.
So I'm now on the Planning and Zoning Commission for Johnstown, Colorado, which is up near Loveland. And I know that land use decisions is a huge part of that committee's job, right?
Absolutely.
Running it,
Absolutely.
and I'm thinking to myself, well, hell, there's lots of little waterways around here. Why can't we put Emily's stuff here? Anyway,
We
side conversation.
absolutely can. We
Yeah,
absolutely can.
okay, very good. So I can only imagine. Yeah, you said it earlier, and I bet that is a major, I don't know if pain point is the right term, but major friction is VC is calling you saying, hey, yeah, how fast are we going? And the city, the town, the county, it's like snail pace on every single thing they do. I mean, oh my God, that part right there would be, oh, whoo.
Tough. It's definitely tough, but it's one of the reasons why we have spent so much time designing and developing this partnership structure.
Okay.
Is that, when you go to a town or a county and you say, hey, I need you to allocate, this much of your annual budget to us. That's a really hard ask, and really one that they shouldn't be asked. I don't want someone coming to my county and saying, put all this money aside that you were spending on services that you're now going to spend on tech, right? And so being able to come in and say, look, we're not looking for you to open your pocketbook. We're not looking for you to change your budget. We just want you to partner with us and share in some new revenue generation.
Yeah, you're giving them money.
Resonated really well.
You're giving them money.
Resonated really well. I think, there's always some devils in the details, like, for us to actually hook our electrical lines into the grid, they require us to have really solid,
I see.
multi-decade leases, and sometimes those can be hard to get done quickly, even though we're not asking them for monetary exchanges or things like that. It's sometimes hard just to get the legal side over the fence, but yeah, it's a tension that I manage all the time, because I truly believe that this is a technology that can scale as quickly as solar, but we have to get into that repeatability that we're still, I'd say, ironing out a bit.
If I was your VP of sales, I'd be like, look, Windsor, Colorado, put 8 of these in. Here's how much free extra money they got last year that they didn't have before. I'm trying to give you free money. We just need to put the damn things in. Like, what are we what are we waiting on?
What are we waiting for? Let's do it.
Why would you say no? Like, I don't, there's no, what are the negatives? I guess besides the cable that you mentioned. I mean, why wouldn't you do it?
I mean, every district definitely has, they have history of, let's say, a car driving into the canal, or these, there are some, certainly some maintenance types of questions or concerns that always come in. This is a physical piece of equipment in a body of water. And, first law of physics is things can't occupy the same space. So we do have to, making sure the system's adequately protected. It's not causing a headache for them. They're not getting phone calls saying, oh, this thing's clogged up with sticks. I'm not getting my water. There's a lot of little things that definitely districts have every right to be concerned with. And it's our job to make sure they can see that, number one, we're going to do everything we can for that not to happen, but 2, it's our responsibility if it does, and here's what we're willing to do to make sure that they're not impacted. But these are, they're, like I said before, it's trust, and making sure we can build that trust over time is something that we love to do. It's a joy of mine to spend time out with the water conveyors, but
okay,
how do you keep the sticks with the hockey stick curve I'm expected to hit, right?
Yeah, totally. How do you keep the sticks from getting clogged up in it?
There's some very simple ways. You can either put a screen in front of it to collect those that actually lifts it out, or we can remotely actually activate a flushing mechanism, just like a pump that flushes the water in and out. So those 2 things are very simple ways you can keep it mostly free. But if you do have I can't. If there is cars or trucks driving down in the canal, it is a concern that we have to be, quite attuned to.
Okay. I know we're almost out of time. A couple of more questions here. So you've raised, with the amount of money you've raised, I'm going to make an assumption that Emily isn't technically in 51% of the cap table right now. I'm assuming.
Yeah, it's no longer a woman-owned business. Still a woman-led business, I like to say.
Yeah.
But yes, no longer a woman-owned business from when we first started.
Have you ever, for the listeners, and this is just, I get this question all the time from entrepreneurs that come on the Riderflex show, how soon to give up control, how much money to raise. And then they come on the show and goes, oh, as soon as I gave up 51%, I hated my life because then I had to deal with PE firm and the VC firm and I wish I'd never taken the money, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I've heard all the nightmare stories, right? Now, by the way, they're not all nightmare stories. Some of them are wonderful stories. Some of them are great stories. Did you have stress with that first time you took enough money to give up control? Was it stressful for you, or you were like, whatever, let's just go forward?
I didn't. I really, for me, I'm focused more on value than on control. And okay. I would much rather own a smaller part of a $1 billion company than half of a $10 million company. And so for me, it's always been a value-driven decision about, can the capital that's coming in take us to another level in the value that the company is? And if the answer is yes, then I don't lose sleep over it. I think it's, I'm here to build an awesomely great business and then probably do it again because that's what's in my blood. And so it's not, I don't really get too bothered by the control percentages, as long as I know that we can continue to rely on our management team to be able to take the business where it needs to go for day-to-day operational control.
Okay, so I'm gonna give you a big compliment now. Okay, you ready?
Ready for
it. When I first really studied your profile, I thought, man, wow. Okay, so it wasn't like she was a C-level person before this. It wasn't like she moved up in a company through the ranks. Okay, I'm a VP, now I'm an executive VP, now I'm COO, and now, and then, okay, now I'm going to start a company and be a CEO. No, you had to basically learn how to be a founder and a CEO all at the same time with no prior experience at that level. And usually when I see that jump like that from a founder and they've raised this much money, the VC or a PE will remove them pretty quickly and say, okay, thank you. Nice job. We're moving somebody else in because blah, blah, blah. Well, and you've been doing this now for a number of years, and that has not happened, which tells me that they are very comfortable with you and that you've proven how valuable you are, or else the board would have already made changes. And then after speaking to you and listening to you and having this conversation, I'm like, damn, she talks like an experienced CEO, like she's done this 3 or 4 times.
Well, I really appreciate that. And I'm super grateful that our board has the trust in me that they do.
Yes.
And
great.
Will that always continue? I don't know. Should it? Probably not. I often tell our team, our 40-person team, that yes, I'm the CEO and I am empowered to make those decisions. And hopefully everyone can rest assured in my representation of them as their CEO. On the day-to-day, they need to think of me as their founder. And I want to hear from them. I want to talk to them. I want to be a part of that sales meeting. I want to travel and talk to customers. I want to be there on installation day. And so navigating those 2 hats between founder and CEO is something that, again, I feel grateful that I'm entrusted to wear both those hats today. And I'm also self-aware. I may not wear both of those hats forever. I think it's been important to me to bring in the investors and the board members that I believe will continue to take the company in the direction that it needs to go in. And that gives me I guess, in coming to work every day with both of those hats on.
You're doing a fantastic job. Congratulations on everything you guys have built. EMRGY.com, Emrgy.com. Thank you, Emily, for being on the Riderflex show. I really appreciate it.